All set.
Thank you. Okay, I'd like to call the November 28th East Line Board of Ed regular meeting to order. 6:01. For those who can stand, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so next order of business is public comment. Any public comment? Hearing none, move on and move on to the approval of minutes, and we have the minutes from the November 7th meeting to approve. Any edits, changes, corrections? Does anyone want to make a motion to approve the minutes?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of November 7th, 2022 Board of Education regular meeting.
Second,
Further discussion? All those in favor? Oh, so for those of you on Zoom, I see Laura, Candace, and Jill. If you can either thumbs up or raise your hand as we go through that would be great, or you can come off mute, but it might be easier just to see. So all those in favor of approval of the minutes, say aye.
aye.
Laura, are you there?
Where'd my hand go?
Laura, do you approve the? Oh. Laura. Okay. Abstain. Opposed and abstain. Sorry, a little slow, just trying to get the technology going. Okay, minutes are approved. Now we have the minutes for the November 14th meeting. Any comments, edits? Okay. All those in favor? We hear a motion to approve the minutes.
So
Second, all those in favor of approval of the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Candace. Jill. Opposed. Abstain. Okay, minutes pass. Okay, moving on to special reports, and we have Ann Santoro to give our selected report. Ann, thanks for coming.
Welcome. So, December 7th, town meeting at 7 p.m. For your district requests, the East Line Middle School water heater and the pickup truck with the snow plow. So final stages, Board of Finance approval, Board of Selectmen approval for that. And now town meeting on the 7th. So I know there's usually some representation from what time did you say? It's at 7. It's like the town meeting comes first and our regular meeting, yeah. So you will be in good shape, I think, on that.
Good.
Let's see, at our November 16th meeting, there was a presentation by SCORE, the Southeast Connecticut Organization for Racial Equity, and we had a presentation, informative presentation about racism as a public health crisis. And prior to that presentation, I had been meeting with, I did meet twice with two members of the organization. And Dan Cunningham and I have been assigned to a subcommittee to address some of the concerns. So our hope going forward is that we can continue conversation, have dialogue, and find ways in which we can address the concerns of the organization. One suggestion that I actually made at the meeting was, is for the organization to come with us come to us as a board with very specific concerns, because that's kind of how we operate, how we govern. I know there's been good success, I think, with the police department and Chief Mike and members of discussing various developments, the Accountability Act, et cetera, et cetera. So we're hoping going forward to have that similar success. Other things, we didn't have too much on our last agenda for Board of Selectmen, but the Dominion building, as you all know, is the former, let's say, residence of our police department, former offices of our police department. So the question is, of course, it's owned by Dominion. The question is, what's to become of that building? At one point, in the recent past, Board of Selectmen, pretty much I'd say by consensus vote or whatever, or by consensus, thought this is not something we want to own. We much rather have someone else purchase the property, develop it, prime location. There have been issues that have been raised about potential contamination on the site. I'm sure you heard of those things. So this is something we weren't necessarily wanting to get ourselves involved in as a town. However, there's a charrette study being done through Niantic Main Street and the town, and they're sort of re-examining the issue. So, we're open to ideas. We'll hear out what comes of that charrette study and what the recommendation might be for that building. But it still seems like it might be a prime property for a developer, for restaurants, mixed use, something like that. So actually a lovely view once you get high up there. So we'll see what happens there. I wanted to point out one other thing. Tomorrow evening, there's a planning commission meeting, 7 p.m. and there's a public hearing about affordable housing. And I recommend that you go. I believe these meetings are videotaped or live streamed, I should say. So on the agenda will be the public hearing concerning the draft, which I have here. And I think it's worth a look at. I think it's I have some opinion on this.
And is the draft online?
Yes, it is. You have to go to the documents for the meeting and you'll find it there. So very interesting. And I think to have extra input here would be very helpful. Certain things were analyzed in this draft and certain things I think weren't. That's just an opinion, personal opinion. But I think it's a good thing to consider going to. On other events in town, we had a holiday stroll and lighting the tree this past weekend, and it was just a lovely night to be out. Honestly, it's probably one of the prettier nights that we've had for that event. So that was great and very well attended. Lots of families, lots of children. That's what I primarily noticed. Next, not this weekend, next one is Niantic Blood Parade, 6 p.m. So let's just hope for the same one, because usually that ends up being increasing. That's about it. Any questions?
Question for any questions online? Thanks, Sam. Appreciate the updates. And we'll move to the Eastline High School student representatives, and we have Mihira and Brendan to give updates.
So, first of all, happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Glad to be back. So on the topic of Thanksgiving, the football team unfortunately lost our Thanksgiving game to Waterford this year. So that's sort of a disappointing end to fall sports at the high school. But on that note, winter sports are starting up pretty soon here. I know basketball tryouts are happening this week after school at some points. And I guess you could also say sports, recreational activity, I guess. The Powder Puff game, the juniors lost to the seniors. So that was from what I've heard, a fun event to be at. There were some students that came, but not as many as past years. So, you know, in future years, hopefully we will try and get a better turnout for that. But other than that, attendance today wasn't awesome. Mainly probably as a result of people still on vacation from the break, or you know, people sick from the sudden change in weather over the past week or so. But hopefully that will be back up to normal soon.
Juniors are still working on planning winter ball. I think I mentioned this before, but it's scheduled for February 4th. And we're still working on finding a DJ and sorting out the details of that. Something that we're working on, and junior and senior summit just work together with leaf cleanups that we do every year. And we're wrapping that up with this weekend. We're finishing the last house and we got a good number of donations. So we're splitting the costs.
Any questions? I have a quick question. How are the seniors doing with college applications and everything like that? Going through that? And then say maybe the same for juniors. I guess you're probably mid SAT and all that.
Yeah, we're getting our SAT scores back on December 6th. So I know people are getting that. But besides that, pretty much.
Yeah, college applications are going well as well. You know, November 1st is, you know, the main early action deadline or early decision deadline. So a lot of people got in a lot of schools then, and coming up January 1st to the 15th, somewhere in that time frame is most schools' regular decision deadline. So a lot of people are getting their college applications done, but we seem to be in a little bit of a lull at the moment.
Right. Thanks. Thanks so much for the update. And we'll move on to the next update. We actually have a new special report we're going to have on athletics, and Steve Hargis, thanks for coming, is going to give us an update on athletics.
Thank you for inviting me. It was a pleasure to come and address this group. Give you an update on where our.
Hey, Steve, could you just come up to the, can you get to come up to the podium there with the mic? Be all right to, can you, we can pull a chair right up or bring the mic over to you, actually, maybe that'll work. There you go.
Yeah.
Pull the mic right over to you.
No.
There you go. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, sure. So what I want to do is just give you an overview of how fall went. What we're looking for is a spring, a winter kickoff. Also talk about some of the unique things that happened this fall, which really kind of fascinating to me. And the numbers that we also were able to maintain for athletic department. We all known about these, talked about these, and it continues to be strong. So I want to come and brag a little bit tonight. It's obviously to find people here part of the group that make us look good on a daily basis. At present, we're running with approximately 32 teams. And that's so that's going to be, that's right, 32 sports, and that's going to be about 52 teams. That's a lot. It's a lot, but it's not a lot of additional costs associated with it. We try to expand our offering, and not because Title IX is Title IX, but because we want opportunities for more people in the school. And so we have now initiated a program with girls. We had the girls signed up for it. We signed them up for 5. We run out of Woodstock. And it's a program outside CIAC, so the girls can develop their hockey skills and continue to grow in that world. We have 8 on the old Eagles. You guys remember the Eagles? Well, they're back again. We're 8 on the team this year. Hopefully they'll put a conference championship banner back up in the gym again. With that in mind, we also had some great performances this year, and I'll cover those in a second. I just want to talk about what happened, these sort of growth in small areas, growth in bigger areas, and in the end, we end up having approximately 35% of your school population participating in and a seasonal sport. So we had 33% of our population, summertime, participate in sport, with a fall. It's using a 990, whatever number, close enough number, that's not going to vary the statistic by 1 or 2 points. So I think that that's a really valuable thing for you to know, because you were having people sign up more and more. Now, I'm a little concerned 4 days out from the total winter sign up, and we're only like at 28%. I'm not going to panic quite yet. I think we're going to cover that mark. A couple really highlights on this one. We want to open the question top. But this year, our Bush cross country team, as you know, 2022, the champions, BC champions. They're also the Class AA tournament champions. So you have to see them in action. So we have the same on the girls' side, the ACC champion and tournament champion. We also had a volleyball team that was very talented this year by all accounts. I got a chance to see them a few times. But the volleyball team also had the unique pleasure of being able to compete at the Sun early on. Now think about this: if you were a young person growing up, you had an opportunity to go to the Sun to play under the big lights. At our school, we've been lucky enough. Our school has done that twice. We've done it to win a Class M championship just last year, and now we have an opportunity to go back and win in this tournament, sponsored by the Sun and by Florida. So that's sort of, I mean, that's just right. Even if you don't, even if you don't stay in the sport, that's one of the things you sit around later on in life talking, having a drink and saying, hey, this is a great opportunity for us. And this, we had the opportunity to plus we really, it was a highlight of our life. Here is more of the good stuff. We had 3 ball players. Volleyball had 1, field hockey had 1, girls soccer had 1, boys soccer had 2. So that's a lot of hardware that these kids are picking up and going to their dinners and enjoying themselves, their families and their coaches. So that's fantastic. And then the one statistic that I want to raise is our academic eligibility program. It is the most, I haven't checked in the recent years, so not in the last 4 or 5 years, but if you cannot participate in athletics, meaning you cannot participate in the game, you can go to practice. If you have more than 2 Ds or an F, that's rigorous. That's extremely rigorous. Now, one would think that something that rigorous and everything else would get out, on them. Well, this particular one will allow us to show that we want to change it a little bit. We average 12 people a season that we would go into everything else relevant. That puts them into the pool where they get extra homework, extra work, extra time with teachers, and we try to bring them along so they can and they stay with their team. They stay with their team. So this is just a great opportunity again for us to pitch in, give them something to hold on as they move ahead in their athletic career. So all in all, I know it's big picture kind of stuff, but it's good picture kind of stuff. I am really looking forward to a great winter. I think the teams are really fine. I'm a little concerned with freshman signups right now, but we're working that problem and we'll get the job done.
Great. Thanks, Steve. Any questions for Steve? I think we.
Want to show the video?
Yeah.
Yeah. Steve, want to just talk about this, the Veterans Day video? We thought this was really something to acknowledge.
Yeah, they approached us about wearing the uniform for National Guard, and if you were watching any kind of football all around the United States, with every college, high school.
Great. Can you just hold off a sec? Yeah, sorry.
So they approached us about wearing these uniforms, and it wasn't just wearing of the uniform, it was the fact that young men and women who were working with our young men about this is some of the ideals of being in the National Guard. These are some of the things that we need to do as part of serving our country. And so it wasn't just photo op, everyone goes away and go home. It was, let's sit down and talk about this while we're getting ready for this big game. And I thought they did a really nice job. When I came here, I had been out on some medical stuff when I came back. Don came up to me, the sports guy, and goes, "So we're all set, where should I be over here?" I'm going, "I don't know." So he got us all organized and put together this really special video.
Well, team colors, and said they use their jerseys to learn more about America's history and the importance of the Connecticut National Guard. Who's Rich Capola has more on that. Rich.
Well, and some of the high school football teams all over the state will look extra special leading up to Veterans Day. It's all because of a new partnership between the Connecticut National Guard and Connecticut high school football teams.
Those of you who don't know me, my name is Staff Sergeant Rucky. I'm a local recruiter. Been to your school a couple times. You don't you recognize me already.
Tonight's game versus Norwich Free Academy, the Eastline Vikings wore Connecticut National Guard football jersey.
I thought that today was nice and those jerseys. And hey, we're ready to play. And he's like, what they say is very good reasons, and we probably should do a little better in the tank. Like I said, just kind of an opportunity to do this for them. We're very honored to be this person to do
The partnership created by the National Guard Hometown Football Uniform Program aligns currently serving guardsmen like Staff Sergeant Rucky with schools so they can speak to students about the importance and overlap of the Army values.
Feel good about it. You like wearing those patterns. Feel good about wearing the uniform and representing the organization that I'm in. You want to do it a little bit more than just one night during Veterans Day. You guys should contact me and make sure that happens.
A way to honor our military, local guardsmen and veterans who serve and continue to serve. This was the home for Coach Favors.
Fathers are Navy, he's been 20 years, so for an opportunity to wear this was great. And I said, I'm a Navy kid.
It's portray the message of the history that our organization has in the United States of America. Really how it helps create the country that we live in today.
Lights on 3, only on 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And really, tonight was just the beginning. The jerseys will be worn by other schools at games next Thursday and Friday, the Friday being Veterans Day. And then talk about providing National Guard jerseys for other high school sports like basketball. I'm Richard Paul.
I never thought I'd like Florida Public Service.
Thank you, Steve. It was great. I don't know if anybody saw or was at the Thanksgiving game. We had some members of the service that were out on the field too at the beginning of the game. So that was, Steve and I were standing next to each other when that happened. That was pretty neat to see, which was new. So, yeah.
Great video, great to see. Thanks so much, Steve. Appreciate you.
Yeah, appreciate
Yeah.
it, Steve. Thanks.
So we'll move on to our discussion action items, and the first item on the agenda is the CREC presentation. And yeah,
So Jenica Jenkins is here from CRAC. Jenica, welcome. I'm glad you're here. Thanks. And she's going to take about 10 minutes and just kind of walk through some slides, which everybody had a chance to take a look at as it pertains to recent collected survey data. Jenica, I'll turn it over to you, and Grant, can we okay, we'll display that up there. We'll take a look at your slides. So Jenica, how long have you been with CRAC?
Well, I am just now transitioning to a full-time epidemiologist with them, but I was
Excellent.
their data coordinator remotely for, it's been about a year and a half.
Okay,
So I'm excited. So I really like what they do for them.
wonderful. Great. Welcome you again, and
Which presentation was that?
the CRAC data presentation.
That's it, East Line Road.
There you go. Thanks, Grant.
You want to download?
Looking for my Zoom connection.
Okay,
There we go.
we can just scroll
All right.
along. So I'm about to pepper you with a lot. And I'm sorry about that, but if you can just bear with me, we'll move further. So this is a summary of the statistics from the Eastland Youth Survey that was completed in April of this year. And it was endorsed and sponsored by Eastland Public Schools and the local convention council. It was administered to grades 7 through 12 online, and it was all anonymous. So we had a total of 1,194 students participate, but 83 were excluded due to inconsistent responses, missing data, or failure to answer questions about substance use. So the final analysis included 1,111 students, and we had about 80% participation, and these are the breakdown by grade. The lowest was 12th grade, but it was at least 50%, so we have that representation. So what we got from this. So alcohol is the substance of choice among Eastland youth so far. We have 16.6 of the entire sample reporting that they have ever used alcohol in their lifetime. And 5.1% of those report that they have used in the past. And this chart here shows the breakdown by grade. So you can see here that we have among 12th graders when it comes to alcohol. So in terms of where they're getting their alcohol, they most commonly report that they're getting it from friends, followed by parents with their permission. And 17% are reporting that they have been drinking essentially in the past 30 days. And where they are drinking alcohol in the past 30 days is the homes of others and at their own home. When asked about their motivations for using alcohol, they gave social reasons, to party, celebrate, and also enhancement reasons, which is because I like the feeling, it's fun, I enjoy it. We also asked those who never used alcohol, they've never had a sip or anything, why they chose not to engage with alcohol. And they said because they were not interested in it and their parents disapproved. So that's really important to know. Moving on to marijuana. This is the second most commonly endorsed substance among Eastland youth. 9.7 report ever using marijuana in lifetime, and of those 4.8% report having used it in the past 30 days. Again, we're seeing the highest amount of use among 12th graders. And they are getting their marijuana from their friends and at a party without adult permission. These are the most endorsed responses. So among those who have ever used marijuana in their entire lifetime, 60% are reporting that they're smoking marijuana and 48% are reporting that they've vaped marijuana. Now this is ever in lifetime. And among those who have used marijuana in the past 30 days, they're saying that 74% of them vaped and 65% of them smoke. So it's interesting that there's a difference between recent users and lifetime users in that aspect. So this is interesting here. When asked why they use marijuana, they first endorsed enhancement reasons. So for fun, I like the feeling, but then they also followed it with coping reasons, which is mood management to cope with your problems, feelings, stresses, and this is the problem. This is indicative of. So for those who never have used marijuana, we also asked them why they've never engaged with marijuana. And they said, again, lack of interest in parental discipline. So now moving to illicit substances, it doesn't look like regular use of illicit drugs is a problem among Eastland. It's very, very few and far between. Of those that we're seeing across the grades, 1.2% have ever reported using hallucinogens. So even though 5% of 12th graders are saying that they have used hallucinogens, only 1.2 across the entire sample at hallucinogens, and 1.7% have ever used synthetic marijuana. And I believe there's the only two endorsed to have ever used. Then we move to electronic cigarettes. So this is an emerging issue among youth, definitely. And we're seeing that 8.1% of East Lyme youth have reported that they've ever used e-cigarettes. And 2.8% are reporting that they have recently used in the past 3 years. And some we're seeing in the area, they're interestingly using the vape devices for THC now. So this might have implications for existing, vape policies. In terms of prescription medications, 1.6% of youth are reporting misuse of pain medication, and 1% of youth are reporting misuse of downers. So it's not very high. And they are getting these prescription drugs from their home, followed by friends, if they're misusing. Over-the-counter medications, misuse of over-the-counter medications, like using cough medicine or what have you to get high. Only 3% of the entire sample report they have ever done this, and 0.6% report that they've done this in the past 30 years. Perception of harm, we're moving towards their perceptions of what they're doing, and this is an interesting chart here, because it's comparing the perception of great risk of using these substances. So perception of harm essentially compared to their lifetime use. So if you look under cigarettes and other tobacco, we have a really high perception of risk and a really low use rate. When you move over to marijuana, for example, it has the lowest perception of risk. And it has 9.7% of use. That is the second most common use rate. Alcohol is the highest, and it has a little bit higher perception of great risk. So it's interesting to see the difference between those. So this next slide is comparing the perceptions of risk and their perceptions of the parental attitudes and the perception. As you know, their perception of their peer attitudes is indicative of their use, it's indicative of their norms, correct? So if we look, we can see, for example, under prescription drugs, they have pretty much the same perception of risk versus what they expect their peers to disapprove as well. So that's about the same. And then the final one is their parental attitude. So their parental attitude about it, they expect their parents are not going to want it. So sorry. So it's interesting to see the difference between them. Like if you look at alcohol, for example, we have 45% are saying that there's a great risk of using alcohol. They think 55.9% of their friends will think it's very wrong for them to use alcohol, and 76.8% say that their parents are going to find it very wrong for them to use alcohol. So moving on from that, this is their ease of access for various substances. We have very hard and very easy. Very hard is in blue, very easy is in orange. So, let's see. I wanted to point out, we have various questions about marijuana. So we have marijuana for smoking, high concentrate THC, marijuana edibles, and marijuana for vaping. And we have different, perceptions of it being very hard or very easy, depending on what it is. I believe marijuana for smoking has the highest rate of being very easy to obtain. So moving on from that. This is a little snippet of antisocial behavior, things that might be risk factors. We have 25%, for example, that have claimed to have cheated on a test in the past 12 months. We also are asking if they've ridden with a driver who is under the influence. 7.2% said that they have. We also asked if they have drive while they're under the influence of alcohol. 1.9% said that they have. And then we asked if they drove while they're under the influence of marijuana, and 1.6% said that they have. And this is a breakdown of how we're feeling, just generally day to day. We're asking about if they feel lonely, if they feel sad most of the time, if they're good at making decisions, if their life's going in a positive direction, and if they stand up for what they believe in. This is from strongly disagree to strongly agree. And if you look at this, we see it looking pretty good when it comes to positive items like good at making decisions. Most of the students responded with agree or strongly agree thinking. When it comes to feeling lonely, you see most of the percentages are on the orange and blue, which is strongly disagree to disagree. So these are indicative like of good coping and, you know, good data. So this is mental health in the past 12 months and this is a little different from what we just saw because we see that we have 20%, 20.7% for reporting thoughts of hurting themselves. Serious thoughts of hurting themselves. 12.4% have reported that they have hurt themselves on purpose in the past 12 months. 17.4% are indicating depression, they're sad or hopeless for about 2 weeks at a time. And 8.3% have reported seriously considering suicide. This is about their social support, as in when they have a problem, do they reach out to someone? And we're saying here that you generally they will talk with a friend, which is the green and blue. Sorry, this is broken down by never, almost never, sometimes, often, and always. So they will talk with a friend. They'll talk with their parent. They won't usually talk to a teacher, but it's concerning in the red there in the circle. About 56.4%, so they usually keep it to themselves. We have a variety going on here. Now, moving on to family, this is a comparison of the perception that their parents think it's very wrong for them to do something versus whether they feel that they have clear rules at home. So I thought that the most interesting piece here was under alcohol. We see here that 50% of students are saying that their parents would find it very wrong for them to do alcohol. And 66% say that they definitely have family rules. So there's a disconnect between parents finding them using alcohol wrong and having rules. Maybe their rules are different, or it's not zero tolerance policy, for example. So this is the protective factor, which is their involvement in school. We're looking pretty good here. The majority of them try to do good work in school. The majority of them feel safe at school, and the majority of them feel that teachers and staff encourage and support them. So this next one is the perception of community, which is another protective factor against substance use. And also we're looking good here, the majority of them find that their community is a safe place. The majority of them do not feel that kids are often teased or taunted. They don't feel like a lot of drugs are sold. And they feel like adults value teens. So these are all generally positive. And then finally, these are prevention strategies for alcohol prevention. This is broken down by grade and by number 1, number 2, number 3 to 3. You can see here that we have a lot of this, checking IDs, having license, fear of addiction are the big 3 here. So that is all. We have come to the end of the peppering. Were there any questions?
Jenna, can I just ask across, regional, if you looked across districts regionally, and those categories that you shared, where do we fall on the average? Does it vary? I know that's a very broad perspective, but just you've seen the data from other towns.
Well, generally, we don't like to compare towns. It feels like you're kind of pitting them against each other, like, oh, we're doing better. Fine.
Yeah.
But I would say this is probably about average, probably, I'd have to look.
Okay, yeah, that's again,
Yeah,
broad,
I
very
can't
broad, but
definitively
this was,
say, but what I'm seeing here is generally what I see when I'm running. So
Okay.
It's nothing was jumping out at me. If anything, it looks good in terms of their protective factors and like that and school and what have you.
okay.
I don't know.
No, thank you.
How honest do you think the kids are being?
So with any kind of self-report, there is going to be a discrepancy between actual behavior and their self-reported behavior. And so we're gonna have to, this is probably under the report. I can almost guarantee this probably is, but that's just the nature of any survey work. So the only thing that we could do to increase your confidence and the data here is to take behavioral measures, actually sit down. That'd be a lot of work.
No, and I asked that because my hearing is different than
Oh,
the results.
absolutely. So this is just one way that we can kind of take a snapshot of that, of what's going on here. And so we utilize it, but obviously the best way would be multiple methods and
Jenica, if you were to just summarize, oh, go ahead. Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Jamie has another question.
It's okay, go ahead, Kate.
If you were just to summarize what you feel about the statistics and what you gathered, is there anything that really stands out to you?
I mean, generally, I am interested in the marijuana use because of the changing culture around it and the, you know, the legalization of everything, and the perceptions are going to change. I'm concerned about that. And I think it's extremely important to note motivations for using marijuana compared to alcohol. In my opinion, having coping as a major reason for using marijuana is important. And that's something that I would definitely pay attention to in terms of prevention. And also the vaping devices and the fact that you can use THC in the vaping devices is a problem. And from my experience, a lot of youth will use the vaping device and for using it for coping, will do it in school. This is the problem. So those two things I think for me would be important issues.
Well, and then following up with that, I guess I'm concerned about the brain and the plasticity, and they say brains continue to develop until a kid's 25 years old or older, right? So, and then this is interfering with their opportunity to learn. And since it is anonymous, what is our recourse? What do we do? What are your next suggestions? How do we handle this as a Board of Education? What are your recommendations to us?
I'm not sure. I have to really think on that. It was my team to have some recommendations for that. Mostly just.
Well, it's nice data, it's good information, but
Yeah.
it's a flag, it's a red flag, right? And then, you know, you just put the flag up the pole and now we're all looking at it. So it's just like, and now it's our responsibility to make an action plan or do something or follow up on something. Which brings to mind that I was just at the play a couple weeks ago and, you know, they were pretending to be drinking and staggering on the stage and that's kind of the model and that becomes normalized and that's what we're showing and how we're acting. So that concerns me. So I just think as a board, we really need to kind of take us seriously. And if you can give us ideas and suggestions on how to do it, because especially if they're vaping and driving, drinking and driving, you know, we've had previous alum have gotten into accidents after having had alcohol and then crashed. So it's definitely part of the culture. I know when my kids, like when my daughter graduated, I was just like, there will not be alcohol served at your graduation party. Other people were serving. I didn't believe that was the proper way or venue for that. You know, they're 18 years old.
I mean, I definitely think that party perceptions around marijuana is a huge thing with parents as well. Everyone, you know, the idea that it's natural is a problem. And because the way that kids are using marijuana today is vastly different than years and years. So and that education around that is so important to understand that when if you're vaping marijuana, that is not natural. It is gone through a chemical process that actually makes it extremely dangerous. I think that information is so important to get out there. So I don't know if kids are aware of the nuances, but I know that's like a tired education, but.
Thank you.
So one of my favorite lines in here is using any substance to cope is indicative of addiction. Because so many people out there say that marijuana is not addictive. They just say marijuana is not addictive. It's not a gateway drug. It's not addictive. It's not a gateway drug. It is.
And I wish East Lyme had followed how Waterford went and not allowed marijuana in our town. And I wish that they had decided to not let it open shop here in East Lyme. Because of all this stuff we've just talked about, how it is different. It's different than it was in the sixties. It's different than it was in the seventies, eighties, nineties. It's just a different drug. And you're right, it is different when they vape it. And nobody tells them that. Right. I think with it being legalized and so many parents and adults out there saying it's okay for them to use it, we're going to see that number go up if they tell the truth. I just saw this special this weekend on the Today Show about students in Michigan. I sent it to you guys.
Yeah.
This student wrote a play about drug use, and all the students got to see his drug use from his perspective and how it actually made them think about picking up the pill, picking up the vape, picking up the drink. And I think that with the Youth Coalition, we are working on some things to come into town, but I think that the kids and the adults need a realistic view of what the drugs today are versus what the drugs were when we grew up. But I want to thank you for adding that line in, because a lot of people say that marijuana is not addictive, and it is.
Other questions? Annalise?
I'll just,
Or comment?
I'll just piggyback on what Jamie's saying in terms of the Youth Coalition and work with Sarah Furman. We are working with Sarah on bringing a peer-to-peer vaping program. It's one response to the data. It's clearly not enough, but it is one thing we've been talking about. We met with Deb Kelly on that. That is planning on coming to the high school in March. But I think our next level of work, now that the board has seen the data, is actually to put the data in front of our health teachers and PE teachers to talk about how do we respond to the trends that we're seeing here in East Lyme, and what changes or shifts can we make in our curriculum to address some of those perception issues that we're seeing coming through the data. And the last thing I'll add in terms of the question around comparative data, Jeff. We do have access to comparative to national averages. I'll say lifetime use and most recent use for most of, well, for all of the substances, we're falling at like half of what the national average is. I will include that in the weekly update for you as an additional piece of data, so you can take a look at it, but it's much less than what the national average is in East Lyme across the board.
That's nice.
And I will say, as the coalition, we haven't really looked into these yet either. So,
Just one more follow-up question, and if I'm out of order, let me.
No, go ahead, and then I have some.
Oh, okay. Just I'm wondering, Dr. Seekant is our advisor, right? Our medical advisor. Is this something that we would share with him and have him weigh in? Because I know he understands the importance.
It might be good for him to see, yeah, and he covers, many districts across the southeastern Connecticut and beyond. So, yeah.
So hopefully this would be part of his job description. Because I think
Take
he's,
a look at
I
it,
think
yeah.
he's brilliant. Yeah.
I had a
Could I-
few
Can I ask a question real quick?
Jill, let me just go quick and then.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Sure.
So Annalise, do we have that for Connecticut as well as national, or just
the only
national?
thing I have in this report that was provided to us was national, but I can ask, we can reach out to.
If you get Connecticut, I think that would be good. One of the ways that helps you manage data where people may not be telling the truth is if you can compare, maybe not district to district, but if you compare to some averages, if you figure most lie on about the same rates, within Connecticut, then you say, well, where are we relative to everybody else, which I think is helpful. One comment, I think if you look at this data, the national and international information that has been shared on the dangers of smoking, pretty effective. The dangers of drinking and driving, I think has been pretty mad and others. For marijuana, the national and international information sharing with students is there's not much. And I think that students, you said it, and I'll take it with, when we talk about drinking or driving under the influence. Students, most students would be like, I wouldn't drink and drive. But they would smoke and drive. And they don't think that's a problem. And so I think that education piece, I think is really missing, and I wish there was some national campaign to do that, and hopefully there will be at some point. But maybe there's things that we can do.
Well, absolutely. And what I think is great in the information that we gained from the survey is that one of the biggest preventative factors for folks is fear of addiction. And so to implement that in health curriculum to really demonstrate, like you were saying, Kate, the impact of substances on the brain and how, how it impacts behavior through that dopamine cycle can be quite eye-opening, and is not necessarily always a pathway we've taken in substance abuse education. We always sort of, talk about what will happen, what can happen to your lifestyle, but we don't necessarily always get really deep into the impact and development of the brain and the addiction cycle, which in the data it demonstrates that is one way that might be, a little bit a better way to approach it with teenagers in Eastline, who say fear of addiction is one of their biggest preventative.
Thanks. Jill? We lost you.
If I can just jump in again while we wait for Jill to pop up. And I'm just thinking of my son when he was doing sports, he just thought his body was his temple, and it was just so important for him to sustain and maintain and to continue to develop his strength and his sports, and also the academic component too. So I think everybody should have access to this information, not just health and PE, but also the coaches and the counselors and psychologists and social workers. And I mean, pretty much everybody, because we still do, like, what is the name of the program where the kids, what?
The next challenge, it's called the challenge program
Yeah.
now, yeah.
We're,
Like there, yeah.
right, so,
We still do that, and Officer Hull has started that up, actually, just was talking about that recently.
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And our policies really haven't shifted much since marijuana became legalized, which is important. We still, drugs in schools is not gonna be tolerated. There's zero tolerance, around that. So,
We've actually added it to our board meeting
Yeah.
policy.
yep, so.
It was
that's-
not in our board meeting policy. It was just against the board policy to not drink.
That's right, yeah, exactly.
We've
So
added to our board policy now that you cannot have substances and drink.
So.
Weird, I don't know why it just said drinking, but now it says both.
Bill?
I just, because we just came off of our climate culture meeting, I'm just looking at some of this other data that's not drug and alcohol related, and I find it interesting that, and I believe this number is probably way underrepresented, that 25% of our student population are comfortable cheating on a test, and 13% are comfortable stealing something under worse that less than $100. That to me is a cultural thing I would like to talk about changing. And additionally, when you look at things, I mean, granted, these yellow numbers they're relatively low, but if we had 1,000 people take this approximately, to me, I'm looking at 85 kids who feel lonely and 60 kids who feel sad most of the time, and that's too many,
Right.
right? And then I'm looking at 20% who are, so 200 kids have thoughts of hurting themselves, and 83 kids seriously considered suicide. That number is way too high. 0 is that's so. I don't know. I'm just looking at our culture climate piece and saying, that is part of the puzzle, I think.
Absolutely.
And it's a support.
It's nice to have this other information based on what we're looking at. And again, I don't know, validate some of this stuff, but let's see if we can get some of the other data as we go moving forward, to collect them, because that's scary to me.
Thanks, Bill. Other thoughts?
We lost
Just-
I
Jill.
lost Jill. Janica, thank you so much for.
Thank you,
coming.
Jenica.
Yeah,
Really
thanks.
informational.
We appreciate it. All right, we'll see you soon.
Okay, moving on, we're on discussion and information to talk about the 2022-2023 budget deficit. There were some slides added.
Yeah, we waited until today because Mariana was just seeing if there's gonna be any other slight changes in the overall, current deficit. There wasn't, so we posted the slides today. I've got some copies here if anybody wants it. And I'll project it up on the screen as well. If I can show you my screen. It's, there we go. Just so folks can kind of see. A lot of this, well, let me first say, for each of our meetings going forward, we really should have this, or at least monthly, have this as an agenda item for ongoing and continued discussions. Given that we're working hard to reduce this number, but a couple of points. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it. A couple of points in the first slide. I won't read these, verbatim. You can take a look, but just some of the history, especially for the public, as to kind of how we got here. This deficit really is that middle bulleted item. It's driven by our health insurance component. We had anticipated we put in a 5% increase for this current year, and it ended up being a 10.5%. Couple $100,000 of a difference there. So that hurt us immensely. And then on top of that, special education costs, utilities, and overall inflation, are all up, and you kind of see those in the next slide, what those numbers, represent. We've worked hard to minimize this deficit through mitigation measures from the start of the year. We've got that, the freeze in place, on supplies. We're scrutinizing every requested purchase that is coming through. We'll talk about that on the third slide. Got a little bit more information, but and the last piece, the Board of Finance had reduced us in this year's budget by 500,000. We had some discussions with them specifically about going any lower. Really is going to cause significant issues with staffing, etc. But we didn't anticipate the additional couple $100,000 and these additional inflation and utilities and special ed costs. So hence, we're in the deficit, and we're working on that, and the need to eventually have a conversation with the Board of Finance about an appropriation. I think it's important that I don't foresee us getting down to zero by any way, shape, or form. So we're working to get the number down, but it's not going to get to zero by the end of this year. So I want to make sure that's stated. The next slide, we created a chart here that basically just gives you a representation of, from left to right, the Board of Ed, the adopted budget for this year. Then that cut I just mentioned from the Board of Finance, the 500,000, which put our town adopted budget at the 54,108,478. The health insurance differential was, I said, a couple $100,000, to be exact, it was $474,000 additional dollars that we did not anticipate. That was the difference between the 5% of what we budgeted and the 10.5% that it actually came in at this year. Utilities, those costs are up this year by $153,000. We budgeted an amount, and it has come in higher with inflation. I think I want to say it's up, Mariana, would that go up about 54%? We budgeted about 24%. Roughly.
Actually, about 14%.
We budgeted 14% and it went up 54%. Okay. And then some pupil service costs, last year, we've been working through staffing shortages. We've had specific positions that we've had to cover with support staff. We had to contract out for those positions. Hence, there's an additional cost on top of what we would pay for our own person to contract out. So the differential for some extra, for positions that we couldn't fill, that we had to use a contracted service, you can see the cost there of 200,000. So far, savings from the supply freeze, we saved 100,000. And then vacancies, we're scrutinizing vacancies, about 50,000. Projected Board of Ed budget at this point, you know, it's still November, but the differential between that last column, 54,785,000, and go back to the town adopted budget of 54,108 and change, there's a difference of $677,000 there. So we're still sitting at that deficit number around 677,000. So just to give you a representation of, you know, how this chart works. Eric and Mariana did some work on this too. Any other thoughts that I missed or anything you want to add to that, or at least or no? Okay. So mitigation measures, the last component here. I mentioned a couple of these, but you know, we're scrutinizing, assessing any and all current positions. So if somebody leaves, you know, we're asking the question right out of the gate. Do we have to fill the position, or is there a way to fill it in a manner of using something or somebody internally? Not to impact, obviously, you know, student need, and the needs of, you know, of staff, and putting undue pressures on current staff. The expenses, I talked about the expenses, supplies, and requests for, you know, purchases. We're continuing to evaluate, you know, gas, oil, electric. It's a good thing, you know, 95% of our buildings are on natural gas. Nyack Center is the only one on oil. Oil is very high in costs, you know, right now. Electric usage, you know, our buildings are open. That's the next slide there, from, you know, 6 a.m. This building up until 10 o'clock at night. The afternoons and evenings, the gyms are filled with teams and park and rec teams and basketball and everything else, and that happens Monday through Saturday. You know, that's the lights are always on, I guess is where I'm going with that. So we're working though to investigate ways to minimize usage of electric, heat, et cetera. Typically, you know, we've left the tennis court lights on for a longer period of time. You still get some more days, and we've cut that off. That's just one example. You know, there's electricity, although fairly small. If you reach out to Steve, so monitoring whenever the, you know, football lights are on or off as well. They shouldn't be on in the evenings, just the lower lights to just illuminate the track for those in the community that are walking in the evening. So the last one, just, you know, reviewing and closing out purchase orders, which will continue to assist as we move forward in further obtaining, you know, the most accurate budget projection. So that just kind of gives you, you know, an overview and an update as to where we are, and we want to open it up for conversation and questions.
I just have a question.
Yep.
I know I think last year, or the year before, we did a mock bill for the town on what their usage of our schools looks like. Like the missed rental fees and everything like that, and all the usage that they use. Is there a way to get that together? Not now, obviously, but for maybe the December budget building workshop, so we can just see what the town uses of our buildings
Yeah, I get that.
on nights and weekends.
Just nights, I can run the report.
Okay.
Again,
Just because I'm curious as to what their usage actually looks like.
Sure.
Thanks.
Well, that's an important point. You know, we don't charge
No.
Park and Rec for anything. They don't charge. We use, you know, Private Field. We use
No,
some
and
of it. They
I'm
don't
just,
charge
I'm
us.
just curious
But
as to
yeah,
what,
it's a good,
because they're
Yeah.
in here almost every night for basketball, they're in every weekend for basketball. I'm curious as to what it looks like.
so this is one of the most prudent things on our minds right now that we are working on daily. So I just want to put that out there, but I also want to reiterate that that number, it's a lot of money. That 477,000, the health insurance is really the killer of unexpected costs. But Mariana's done a great job of continuing to, you know, to track, and we'll continue to provide you, you know, the updated numbers as well. And I think this should just we should maintain this as at least a monthly agenda item.
Thanks, Jeff. Any other questions? we'll also be sharing these, having some discussions with the Board of Finance. Now we have a little more detail to share with them about where we are and what we're trying to do to get back on targets or not as case. Jamie?
If, I'll throw out the big if we hadn't have been cut the 500,000, do we think that we could have saved enough to bridge the gap?
But you would have covered the, yeah, we would have covered the health insurance
And a little
issue
extra?
and a little extra.
Do we think that we could have saved enough doing all our little cuts and some freezes that we would have balanced?
I would like to say yes. I don't know for sure though, but
I'd like to say yes too. I feel it's so early on, but you know, the things people will have blanket purchase orders for things and it's might not come through and as the year goes on, we reduce so they're like they don't.
But we're running 677, that's 500, so we're still 177 that we're saying we
Yeah.
don't really have. There. So it'd be close.
I mean, we've done it in the past.
It'd be close.
Saved and scripted and cut and, but it's never been this.
it's never been this significant. No, that, again, that insurance piece is what the biggest thing was.
It's huge.
So,
And maybe just for those who at home or don't remember, the prior year health insurance had gone up 1.5%, 1.25%. So our projection of 5 was actually a big increase. It ended up 10. So it's not that we did take a shot at estimating a reasonable increase for the health insurance. It just ended up 2x.
and the state for next year is already hinting at,
20 something.
well, hopefully not that high. And they said between 10 to 12%, 9 to 12%. For an increase. Again, it was 10.5 this year, but so we've in next year's budget, we put 12% in. So just so you know, we talked about that at the workshop.
Any last comments on 22-23 before we move on to 23-24? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to the 2023-2024. We had our budget workshop a few weeks ago, a couple weeks ago, with some good discussions. We have our next one on December 15th. And just an interim update, Jeff. We did ask for if anybody had any ideas of savings opportunities. If you haven't had a chance to send Jeff, Jackie any thoughts of, not that we would definitely do, just ideas of things that we can look into to see what would the savings be, what would the impact be, and is it worth it? Kind of those type of conversations. So if you haven't done so already, please send them on to Jeff and Jackie. And then Jeff, I think you were going to give an update.
Yeah,
to some things that you're
That's
working on.
that's really where we're at. We kind of locked ourselves in the conference room, the central office before Thanksgiving, and just kind of honed in on, you know, all items sort of thing. What could be potentially reduced? I'm not going to name any of those things because it's all just, you know, we just went through it hypothetically, but we came up with about $2 million
Wow.
of reductions. That's pretty significant, but that's impactful
Right.
as well.
Of course.
So that takes your 10, well, we came in at 10.2 at the, the initial, right out of the gate, at the workshop for an overall increase. We know that's significantly high. So roughly 2 million drops it down into the, the 6 range. So we would like to kind of hear from, thoughts, ideas, from all of you, again, whether it's tonight or in email format. So we can cross-reference, our list, and then we can collectively start to work through that at the December 15th workshop. But that's a lot of money. And again, there's impact there, but we want to work to find that threshold of how low can we potentially go without really, decimating the district. This is not something I would ever recommend or we're going to plan to do. So.
And are you planning on sharing the list that you generated at the budget workshop in?
Yeah, in some capacity, yes, more kind of globally, but there's where, love to try and have some feedback from us, so we can see, you might be thinking of something that we're not, or wasn't on, roughly our list sort of thing. But, if we are gonna have reductions too, I want to be able to take the time to discuss that with people that are impacted potentially. So. And one piece, we did get information on the solar array in the high schools and that. And Jim, you had asked also about the out-of-pocket expenses, so I think we'll just drop this right in the weekly update. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yep. So thoughts, ideas, anything? Questions, things that we want us to research or look at further or obtain costs for, that's another thing too, we can do.
One more question about the meeting prior to Thanksgiving. Who was a part of that? Was it just
Right.
central office?
Yeah, right now that was just central office. We haven't even met yet with the principals. We're starting that this week to review the school budgets. So we haven't even done that yet. So we just did a very large brainstorming list, myself, Annalise, Mariana, Kim. We just brainstormed it out and kind of just threw everything up on, chart paper and, and thought about options. That was it. So we will need to collectively talk more with folks and prioritize.
Thoughts, questions, comments?
So if I'm understanding things correctly, you want us to perhaps do some brainstorming and then submit to you some suggested reductions in costs for our district and
Yeah, exactly. That way we're all collectively walking into that December 15th workshop with an open and transparent kind of perspective of,
Right.
Feedback from everybody. That's how we've kind of run the budget process, and it's worked for us in the past, and I'd like to keep that going. So, or, I'll just throw out, not that we're looking to change this or get rid of this, but Project O. You might say, well, how much does Project O cost us now? That's about a $46,000 to $50,000 venture. So, is that something that should be on the list, should not be on the list? We talked about that a couple of years ago.
Right.
And we all agreed, we live on a coastal
We've talked about
town.
Project O
We
for
just
16 years.
Exactly. So, it kind of doesn't make sense to get rid of it sort of thing, but because here we are in the ocean, but
well, and I'm just thinking in terms of collaboration, we know that we need psychologists and social workers and counselors and that, but then we have them at the senior center, we have them through Parks and Rec, we have them through the Brian Daigle Foundation, so is there duplication of services? Is our service provided in the best model and light? So maybe reviewing, revamping, kind of organizing it to more effective flow, perhaps, is the best way of looking at it, to meet the needs of our kids, and then using the information that we have from SCORE, and just talked about that, and then the presentation that we just got about the kids with, low agency perhaps, and concerns with addiction, and I mean, there's just a whole host of things that could be under one umbrella almost to streamline it if possible.
we could have a conversation with youth services and said, curious to know exactly. They just added another counselor, I think, or I can't remember the exact number. I don't know.
I know the counselor that they have has a waiting list.
Yeah,
And they all
Yep.
do.
yeah.
She is.
Yep. I know they're supporting a lot of families.
And they
afternoon
just started the
meetings.
supporting grandparents program.
Nice.
Yeah, and that's a good one to bring up. Kate, we just heard some data on, some of the needs of students. That hasn't gone down, especially post-COVID.
No.
That is an area that continues to grow with needed support. So counselors, our social workers, our psychologists are all at the top of the list of a need to
Absolutely.
maintain, But that's the stuff that can generate, thank you, that's what can generate some conversation for us all. And moving forward.
Well, the idea of a health clinic too, I think. And somebody was talking about maybe people having their own insurance to help defray some of the costs. So, I think there's a whole host of things we can review and try to wiggle our way out of this, right?
So I understand that three members of the Board of Finance are attending the workshops, and when I was on Board of Finance previously, that's something we did. What would be the most helpful information that they might be able to provide to you, like certain metrics? What do you expect from them by this participation?
Yeah,
Want me to answer that, or I'm happy to?
I'll take a shot and then.
Either way.
Yeah, so I think there's kind of two parts of what you asked. What's their participation versus what would we want from them? Their participation is, I think it's really important to see part of the phrase is sausage making of how do you get to the end? Because we're starting with a challenge and we're making some tough decisions to get to the point that we eventually adopt and provide. If all you see is what we adopted, you don't know, sometimes it's not clear on some of the decisions and tough decisions that you had to make in order to get to that point. And it also gives them an opportunity to get clarifying questions of understanding what's going on and why is this certain way, and what is Coastal Connections? Why do we have that? What's Project Doe, or what's this? So kind of that understanding going into budget discussions of saying, how did you get there? In terms of what would be for them to provide to us, because first, what we're providing more to them, what they could provide to us, which I think we have not been able to get in the past, is some indication of what does it look like? What do the revenues look like? Because they've been growing, and so how does that look for where we may end up? We somewhat are fly a little blind of, we're looking at our own needs and trying to figure out what we can do, but it's hard to know, and it seems like it's not until after we've already presented that then we hear what the town ended up, and then may end up in a surplus position. So even though, we had reductions. So that part, the earlier we can get at least some indication, because we're kind of in this, that would be really helpful for us, but I don't know that can be provided, but that's, I think, would be helpful for us. Let me just let Jeff see if I missed anything.
No, that's exactly it. Those two pieces, and that's an important point, that second one, that would be helpful to have a clearer picture and a continued collaboration on, where are the revenues for the town falling, which could, help or hurt us, but we seem to have found that, it could potentially help us because there's been a surplus at the town level.
And I would think, to get the full picture, the anticipated expenses of the town, because the town is under some of the same stresses that the Board of Education is, financially, whether it's increase in utility costs and, or more higher costs, in purchase orders, in the labor and materials. I mean, it's across the board. So maybe some of that information, can be coming.
Yeah, I do
I'll
think,
certainly mention that because I think it's a great idea to elicit some information from them that's useful to you in creating a budget. So, to know the status of things, where the town thinks it's going to land.
and to your on the what's going on in the town and the expenses, we actually have I think Mariana talking to the new town finance person, Kevin, sorry, and Jeff with talking to Kevin as well, different Kevins. And I think we get some of that information of the challenges, because some of the biggest challenges are the same. Health insurance and utilities are two of the bigger challenges that are hard to predict. So I feel like we have some conversations of the challenges there. But anything more is helpful, but I do think, there are good conversations and relationships that we have with the town and talking through them.
They still need to maintain their independence as an oversight board, but there can definitely be an exchange of information.
Yeah.
I'll certainly
No, good question.
bring up the topic again, so we get some specific information, specific data for you, that's available.
Yeah. And we're happy for as many of the Board of Finance to come as needed. If it's more than three, they just need to post an agenda that says they're attending our meeting. That's just because they'll have a quorum, but any are welcome to attend and listen. I think it's helpful.
Yeah, it's a good listening opportunity for the Board of Finance members. That's always been the premise behind it.
Other question? Okay, so that closes. Yes, it closes our discussion action items for the night. And we're moving on to administration reports and Jeff.
So just a reminder, so next Monday, we have another, our December 5th, Board of Ed meeting. Everybody can be here. We've got elections, that night, so I get my yearly duty of starting off the meeting. So hoping everybody can be, present, be, important. I sent out a letter today to some impacted families. Kim Davis and I have been working on, some bus driver, continued issues that we've had. We've had some out with COVID, we've had some of them left. And the hiring process takes about 2 months. It's a lengthy process. We've got 2 in the pipeline right now, but it's impacting some of our routes. So, we've heard it from a few parents. So we shared some information out with them today. We could get these 2 new drivers on, and some have left too, Kim, I think, to go take other jobs. So we've seen a lot of change in that facet as well.
Yeah, there definitely has been some change
Yeah,
in their staffing.
Yep. yeah. So, we're continuing to monitor that, and, we'll see what we're looking like, in the coming months, but I don't know if that will be fully resolved, but we've had to combine some routes, and that's caused some issues. So wanted to make sure the board is aware of that. Quick DEI update. We've got a district-wide committee meeting this coming Thursday. Like I mentioned, the last meeting, Linda Darcy, who's works for Learn. She's joining us this year at no cost. She's got a grant from the state, so she's helping our school-based committees as well as our district committee in working on continued programming and work around DEI. So looking forward to having her continue to join us this year in the work that she can do with our committees. And I just mentioned the solar array and that other information. I have that on my list, and we'll put that in a weekly update as well. So that's pretty much it. Again, a beautiful day for Thanksgiving football last Thursday. And hopefully everybody had a nice break. That's good.
Thanks, Jim. Annalise.
Had a great meeting today with our integrated curriculum committee. We met with both vendors who support the EL curriculum. You remember from my last presentation, I talked about some curriculum programs that we're taking a closer look at. Today we dove into EL with the 2 different vendors who provide the program. The difference between the 2 vendors is one has a pretty sophisticated front-facing platform, electronic platform. So the committee looked at both of those. It was a very long afternoon. I will put a survey out to the group to kind of collect their thinking and sort of a safe, confidential way. And then in December, we have a slot open to look more closely at SAVIS, the MyView program. Those are 2 that really surfaced to the top for us to look closer at. After that, we'll have a better idea in terms of where we might want to move forward in terms of a pilot. But I would say today was a very productive and informative meeting. In terms of the tech world, we're continuing to manage some residual issues as a result of the network outage. The tech team's been working really hard at getting into our ticketing system now and kind of getting back online with that. And so getting a daily update from Ben McCarthy, who's the tech team leader, in terms of what are the things that they're continuing to work on. I know that SolidWorks, a program here at the high school for CAD, has really given us a run for our money in terms of getting the server up and running. So it's been an area of focus for us. We had our first Family University event on restorative practice a couple of weeks ago. We had about a dozen folks attend. And I think it was informative.
for them who were there. They were very grateful for the information provided. We've now started a family use section on our website, and as we offer these, whether they're in person or virtually, they'll be recorded and posted on the website. So if you're interested in seeing it, it is posted. With the corresponding resources. Thursday, we have our social media and internet safety presentation here at the high school. Most likely in the auditorium, but if the group is not so big, we might move in here to make it a little bit more intimate of a presentation. And then we have another one coming up in a couple of weeks on standards-based report card. That's it. We're gonna
Any questions, Marilyn?
Well, I just saw some research that was done on kids not necessarily being bullied, but being isolated so that they weren't included in a chat or some kind of a conversation. Is that something that would be part of the media conversation?
It's a good question. I did not, Sarah Furman is facilitating the presentation, but it's absolutely something I can bring up on Thursday night. I'll be there, so I
Okay.
can ask the question
Okay.
to the presenter to see if we're seeing that as a trend. I can see how that could be a factor,
Mhm.
given the use of social media and chat groups and all of that.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Mariana?
So, I just wanted to update you on one of the items I'm working on is electronic payments, so I'm gonna work to minimize the number of checks that we issue, also, save on postage, not that it amounts to a whole heck of a lot, but it'll be, more efficient. There will be two ways to do it, it depends on, what the vendors accept. Well, if the vendors will accept a virtual card, then we'll use that because we get a rebate for that. It's similar to our P card that I had implemented a while ago. We get, right now, we don't use it all that much. We get about $2,200 a year in rebate that goes to the town. So if vendors want it or will accept the virtual card, that will increase that rebate. Otherwise, it'll be just an ACH payment. And it'll be through JP Morgan Chase, which is a vendor that's been that's on the state bid list. So we are working on getting them the information that they need and working to implement it sometime next council, like January, February, March.
Great. Thanks, Mariana. Okay. So that closes the administration reports, moving to committee reports, and there was a AAA meeting just before this meeting. So, anyways, Bill.
Yeah, I think we started actually doing some work. And we are closing in on our definitions of climate and culture. We're, going to take a look at another draft, but we're definitely getting close on that. And we spent some time reviewing a model school climate policy, our Connecticut model policy. And in addition to looking at what was provided there, we kind of cross-referenced some of the policy that we have in place that relates to bullying and climate already in place that we have. So we'll have to take a close look at as we review this. Whether we're going to blend those things or whether we're going to need to make some changes, but I think we're moving forward.
Any questions for Bill? Okay, policy, we have one next week. CAVE, we had the CAVE conference.
Yes.
Jamie, wanted to
Sure.
an update on anybody else want to contribute? as
So
well?
I will first start with Thursday, the night of the delegate assembly. There were two things that did not pass through on all of this. The first thing, which was kindergarten school age entry, did not pass. It failed. The majority of the delegate assembly felt that the resolution was not equitable to lower income families and towns. And they would like to see a better push for universal pre-K. That was the overwhelming thing there. And the other thing that did not pass was the funding or revision of the Connecticut General Statute 1076D12E. The Thomaston Board of Education brings this one to the committee basically every year to try to get the CAVE Delegate Assembly to back it, but they have yet to succeed on that one. That was it for Delegate Assembly. The convention was amazing. It was great. A lot of student voice. A lot of student thoughts. There were 2 outstanding students from Amity and Windsor. They were absolutely incredible. They did not appear to be high school students. We all thought they were college kids. They were so articulate in what they wanted us to know and do on student behalf. They want us to think with a student lens. They want us to have different students on our boards of eds. They don't want high-flying students on our boards. They want students who are not going to college on our boards. They want the middle of the road students on our boards. They want real students on our boards. To us about what it's like in the schools. They want elementary kids, middle school kids, and high school kids to tell us what's going on. It was impactful. The whole weekend was student oriented. We had our picture taken with the State Board of Ed for our leadership award. We had some great presenters. I don't know if anyone else has anything, but it was great. I attended some wonderful workshops.
I have the CAVE certificate too,
Yep.
leadership certificate. I forgot to bring it tonight, so. Sure,
I
that,
know Annalise, you were there Friday?
Yeah.
Kate, you were there Saturday?
Saturday was there.
Candace, you were there Friday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday? Jill's gone, but she was there Saturday. Hope anyone else has anything to add.
attendance was pretty good too.
Attendance was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Lisa was there on Friday.
And Elisa
Yeah.
was there on, she
Oh,
was
I
there
don't know,
Friday
she
and
was there
Saturday.
Saturday.
Yep, she was there both days.
So the presentation on Title IX, some of the changes that were made from that were brought forward. The Biden administration has encouraged the use of multiple pronouns, so that's been instituted. It's become more restrictive. I have a handout I can share with Kim, if you said Kim is our
Kim's
coordinator.
our Title IX coordinator.
Maybe you already have a copy of the information, but I thought it was a nice PowerPoint presentation that the lawyers provided for us, so I've got that. I'm sorry I didn't bring it tonight, but I can drop it off tomorrow. And then there was another one that was on, again, the use of media and the use of like Facebook, Instagram, things like that, and people cannot block people was my big takeaway for that. So you can maybe say, oh, I don't want to have you, commenting on whatever I'm saying or doing, but you can only do that for a certain period of time. You cannot consistently block anybody, especially if it's a Facebook forum, like for our Board of Ed or for whatever. You can't block people from it. It's everybody's opportunity. And of course, there's always the respect and dignity that you need to have when you're on those forums, but I thought that was interesting. So, but those were a couple of my takeaways, and yeah, it was good energy, good music. It was really nice. I appreciated being there. So thank you for that.
I don't know if Candace has anything to add, but I have a huge packet from FOI if anybody wants to fall asleep tonight.
Okay, Lauren, I think you had.
We had Mr. Newton, I think some of you might be familiar with him, came and he presented on budgeting process and how he works with the town and the schools and the collaboration, and instituted that, and people are happy to hear about that whole thing. And then there was a really nice PowerPoint presentation, I think it was after you left, Jeff, about children's mental health and kind of that we really are in kind of a crisis mode with all of that. It was another PowerPoint presentation. 20% of all children have an identified mental health condition annually. 40% of all children will meet criteria by 18. Adverse childhood events, 3 out of 4 kids have these somewhere in their childhood experience, 73%. During the COVID pandemic, it was worse. So, we are just really educating and dealing with some really tough times. And I think that, we know it, I think our families know it, and hopefully the community at large understands that we are asking a lot of our teachers. The nice thing about the Learn Board, and if anyone want to come with me sometime, the energy is so positive, the collegiality is so positive. It doesn't matter what town you're from, what side of the road you live on, but people listen to each other, respect each other, build on their ideas, and collaboratively come up with ideas and systems. And Kate Erickson is the CEO, the director, ED for Learn, and does a really nice job, a lot of energy and very collegial. So it's just a real honor and privilege to be a part of that group. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Kate. Questions, Kate, on Learn? Okay. That closes our committee reports, and we're on to board comments and future agenda items.
Board comment?
Yeah.
I was able to go over to the middle school and was so impressed by the Veterans Day presentation, and a couple of my heroes were there who are WW2 veterans, and they were just so honored to be a part of that process. And I think that it continues, both of these men are in their 90s, so it continues their life trajectory for at least a few more months, few more years. We don't know how long we're going to have them, but how enlightening I think it must be for the kids. I really had a full packed day, so I was only able to stop by, and thank you for that. And I think that Jason, your program just gets better every year, and so thank you for that. Thank you for the invitation. I really appreciated being there. And if other board members, I think if you have a chance to break away for that sometime on the 11th of November, don't miss it. It's really a priority, and it means so much to the veterans for us to be there.
Amy?
Do we know when or how much we're going, I'll start with when are we going to get a bill for our computer issue?
Still waiting to hear. We shared that or asked, 2 weeks ago, I think, so not gotten a bill or any information yet. But I'll circle back. We're meeting with Sue McLaughlin, who's the senior vice president. Is it this week or next week? One of the two. Yeah.
Because I have a feeling that's going to up that deficit that we have dramatically.
Yeah, I have no idea where the, the number for additional, engineering time to help rectify that issue as quickly as we were able to, will cost us. So as soon as we know, we'll share that out.
And with that same regard, are we taking steps to either get insurance, get additional
Exactly.
contract language put in to cover whatever it was that caused whatever happened to us, so it doesn't happen again?
Yeah, I mean, you can never say it'll never happen again, unfortunately, but cyber insurance is one component that we are in process, with. And then phishing emails as well. There's a cost associated with everything, but there's a way many districts, many companies, organizations do phishing. They create their own phishing emails and we send them out as tests. And if somebody hits on it and, opens something they shouldn't have, it takes them to a little mini training session. So we're looking and investigating that as well. That's not something we've done in the past. Some districts do it, some districts don't, but obviously there's a cost associated with it.
They're working on a proposal for us to potentially isolate some of our servers off the network in case this does happen again. Like our finance server, security, so that we can,
HVAC.
just keep running without a glitch and not have that be impacted as a result of a network outage. That would be a proposal we can cover. I think it's something that happens immediately.
Thank you.
Other comments? Okay, hearing none,
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Pretty recent.
Like,
I saw her.